How we doing, church? It's been a week. It's been a big week. So though I try like crazy not to get caught up in the headlines, I do try to keep this space free of partisan punditry. That's one of my goals. And we can't ignore the gospel, which always calls us forward into a certain hope and imagination, right? We can't ignore that. My year at Christ Lutheran Church has been a year of firsts, a lot of firsts, and this is my first sermon after a presidential election. So there's a lot of pressure I'm putting on myself to say the right words, and I'm not going to say the right words. I'm just going to say that right now. So this is a long conversation, right? Discipleship is a lifelong work, and I can't wrap it up all nice and tidy in a bow here. I wish I could. That'd be amazing. Gosh, it'd be amazing if I could. But this homily, I promise you, will be insufficient. They're all insufficient. I think every homily is insufficient in a way. But I pray that maybe there's a word of hope in here for you and for me too. I preach to myself up here, and you guys just happen to listen to it. So, yeah. I don't know if you were here last week during All Saints Sunday. It's one of my favorite days. I wish I could just rewind to last Sunday and just keep doing that over. But All Saints is like this precipice, this liminal space between the created world, this realm and the next realm, right? It's a thin space. It's a precipice. And does it feel like we're kind of on a precipice now, like between one thing and another, kind of like we're on the edge of something? This historical moment is a liminal space, a space between, a space of confusion, and the unknown. I've gotten to know a lot of you this last year, and though I know that I kind of have the temperature in the room, I also know that we don't all carry identical worldviews in every single matter, right? That would be an illusion. I hope I'm not under that illusion. Right now in our world, we have some who are celebrating after Tuesday's results, and we have some who are deeply sorrowful after those results. I know that I am in one of those camps. So if things went your way on Tuesday night, you might think that all will now be well, that everything has been fixed and restored, and this we're going to go on in greatness and all that, right? And on the other side, if things didn't go your way, you may have found yourself in the pit of despair. You might feel that all is lost. And in my meager opinion, I think that this is our malady as Christians. In our current culture, partisan politics has become our capital R religion. We have started to fall under the limited view that the only way to change anything is through this binary of partisanship. But I want to just offer a little bit more of an expansive imagination, maybe an expansive way to see things, because I truly think the gospel breaks us open to see new things. So let us walk into this psalm together. I did not choose that psalm. I did not cherry pick it. It was in the lectionary, and I think it's of divine, what do you want to call it? Divine, what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, that's it. Yes, thank you. But it says it very clear, put not your trust in rulers. Put not your trust in rulers. And I think that the church has fallen into this on all sides of the political spectrum. A lot of Christians don't see the president as a public servant. They see the president as a Messiah. And I'll point out an observation. I do not have a dog in this fight. I'm a registered independent, like Oprah, okay? I see this messianic fervor, right? This kind of propensity to put up a political leader as a messiah. I see it more on one side than I do on the other right now, right? But throughout history, this has plagued all sides of the political spectrum around the world. To say that Jesus would vote for one side over the other would put Jesus under a certain partisan rule, right? But the good news is Jesus is above all brands of limited partisanship. Jesus is Lord of all rulers, for they, like we, will return to the earth where our thoughts will perish. In other words, all rulers are mere footnotes in history under the one true God, Jesus Christ, who is actively redeeming and restoring our world in ways that we don't even know. Another observation that I've made is, as a Christian, I must say I'm deeply concerned with the rise of authoritarianism around the world, the rise of disdain for the other, whoever the other is. And theologian Joy Clarkson wrote something beautiful earlier in the week, and I'll just kind of read really quickly to you. She calls it the coarsening of public life. The coarsening of public life. She said, it has become acceptable for public figures, politicians, pastors, and increasingly, in my experience, ordinary people, to mock people with disabilities and racial minorities, to speak crassly and openly about sexual acts and objectifying women's bodies, to make racial generalizations and slurs, often in the name of just telling it like it is. I find this really horrifying, not only because I think the speech itself is disrespectful and distasteful, but because I think it is revelatory of a culture of disdain for our fellow human beings, and that it has a knock-on effect of stirring up anger, resentment, and sometimes quite literally violence. And I find it spiritually bruising, even as I become inured to it. We should not find it normal to behave in this way. So what I'm pointing to is not just a partisan matter, it's a spiritual matter. It's a spiritual malady that is in the heart of our discourse. And this would be the case no matter who won on Tuesday. This would be the case either way. That is the malady that we are dealing with now. I think this coarsening of public behaviors and speech is something that all of us must resist. This is not about what candidate you voted for. It's about a growing sentiment in our world that runs contrary to love of neighbor, which is the way of Jesus. And I'm sure you've noticed this too. It can feel like all is lost, right? Sometimes. And when you read the psalm, like, you might have some of the same questions that I do, which is, does God truly execute justice for the oppressed? Does God truly give food to the hungry? Does God lift up those who are bowed down? Because when I read the news any day of the week, I see the opposite in a lot of cases, and it can feel hopeless. I trained in a Japanese martial art called Aikido a long time ago, and there was a thing where someone would grab your wrist and you would have to do something. Like, that was like the beginner level move, was grabbing your wrist, and then you would have to do something. And let me tell you, when someone strong grabs your wrist, you become paralyzed. Like, when someone strong grabs you, you become paralyzed. You feel like you can't move because you're focused on that force. But through this martial art, you learn to relax, to feel your other extremities, to loosen up, to know, oh, I can wiggle my toe. Hey, I can wiggle my other hand. Hey, I can actually move my hips a little bit. I actually have a lot more volition than I think I do when I'm just focused on the fear of this grab, right? That's what the word of Jesus does for me, and I hope for you too. We have so much more freedom and so much more volition than we think when we're faced with an oppositional force, faced with fear, hatred, violence. we have so much more volition and freedom than we think. And we come here to celebrate that. The thing about the God that we see in Jesus is not that he is a strong man, not that he forces the world to act to his will, that he just snaps his finger and everyone is acting like the description in the Psalms. He doesn't overpower violence, he dies to it and rises again. Again, all strong men and authoritarians are footnotes to the God who lives and moves in us, around us, between us, and in us, as us. Like we talked about with the wrist grab, we have so much more freedom than we think. Psalm 24 is a description of how God works, even when we aren't. It is a swirling invitation at the base of all existence that we can all step into. And you're already doing this, church. By becoming an open and inclusive church over the last number of years, we have extended the welcome to anyone who walks in these doors. That is not a partisan matter, that is a Jesus matter, right? And my job is to point out all the ways you all are already doing this, and will continue to do this. So I want to just close by reading this quick statement from our bishop. I don't know if you read the bishop statement that went out this week, but I thought it was, I'll share it in the next week's newsletter. I thought it was beautiful and also kind of expansive. He wrote this. He says, "For many, this moment feels fraught with uncertainty, marked by hope for some and fear for others. You may not share the same response to the election as your neighbor in the pews. You are not required to share the same political commitments to be part of the body of Christ. Thanks be to God for that. Do not let partisan differences obscure the unity that we share in Jesus Christ or the mission to which we are called. This is not the time to retreat or fade into resignation. It is a moment for radical solidarity and discipleship. Jesus Christ, not partisan allegiance, is sovereign among us. And Christ's commandment to love each other must guide what we do together next." I thought that was beautiful and timely. So do not be coarsened, church. Do not be coarsened. I encourage you also to rest, to drink water, to rest, and to restore, because we can't do it all. But to know that God is God. God is active and moving, and to carry on your work and your love in trust. Amen.